Oh, caught you opening a drink, Ron.
You
Yeah.
did.
Hey, I don't think we
No.
have any viewers yet, so all good. Happy Thursday to you. Happy hour.
Happy hour, Dave. Happy
Let's
Thursday.
start with a cheers. I always kind of forget until a few minutes into it, so cheers to you.
Cheers. Cheers.
All right. Well, it's Thursday. Ron and I go live on our Little Nessie Happy Hour podcast every week where we talk for about an hour. We usually nail it pretty right on, usually about an hour 5. But we come up with topics, or not we, Ron comes up with topics, and then I give my input on what I think will be engaging, boring, exciting. You pick the adjective. But we've got a handful of great topics today. Ron, and this is 2 weeks in a row where you're actually at home. Look at you.
I know. I'm super happy to be here. Happy to be on land, on a roll.
Yeah, you've been on a handful of cruises and you're not done yet. You've got one more coming up soon.
I know. I can't wait. It's going to be so fun.
Yeah. Well, hey, happy Thursday to you. Let's get into our topics. I don't have my iPad with my topics in front of me. I'll get that in a minute. But we're going to kick it off with a From the Gut, which is a segment where I just ramble for about 8-10 minutes or so. And it's usually just whatever's I've been watching that week, whatever's new in news and headlines. This one's not new in headlines, but this is a YouTuber that I've been watching now for probably a couple years or so. Not religiously or a ton of his stuff, but I first was aware of him maybe a couple years ago. But he is multilingual, speaks, I don't even know how many languages, but I'm tying it into fluency and communication. And then we're going to get into our 3 main topics of the week, which Ron leads the way on. He does all the research and picks, probably about a dozen topics, and then we narrow them down. So our first one is, while I grab my iPad.
First one is affordability. Checking what it actually takes to buy an average home in the United States and how many people can afford it. We're going to look at a couple different articles to help us with this. The next thing is, what the heck is this thing called headship rates, and what does it mean? What's the impact? I wasn't super familiar with this term, although we are now. So we'll talk about that.
And it's not a typo. It's not supposed to say hardship rates.
No, you got that right. And then rich old people. That's going to be a fun topic, which is just going to talk about this massive generational wealth transfer that's about to happen.
I said yesterday that McKenna picks the photos, but I said that one kind of looks like Ron.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
And then we've got a handful of rapid fire topics. So just, I think 4, doesn't matter, 3 or 4 fun, loose topics that we're going to breeze through.
That's right.
Which topic are you most excited about this week, Ron?
I would probably go with rich old people. How about you?
Yeah. Maybe the same. Actually, I'm kind of excited about the From the Gut this week. I've got some interesting thoughts around this guy. So without any further ado,
take it away.
Let's jump into From the Gut. Alrighty, wait till that music's over. But today I want to talk about language and how people who understand it the best usually will have the most influence. Like I said earlier, there's a YouTuber that I became aware of a couple years ago. He has over 7 million subscribers on YouTube alone. I haven't looked him up on TikTok. But I've watched his videos from time to time over the last couple years. His name is Jaume. I think I've pronounced that correctly. His handle is Jaume NYC, if you ever want to look him up on YouTube. He's a 30-something-year-old guy who's multilingual. He can speak, it's probably dozens of languages, if not scores of languages. I don't know. His whole shtick is to walk around, and a lot of his videos are in New York City, where there's a massive number of people who speak languages other than English. He especially kind of targets people who speak Chinese, Mandarin, Cantonese, and quite a lot more. but he'll walk into restaurants and nail salons and grocery stores, barber shops, and he catches people completely off guard when he switches from English into their native language. And the reaction is almost always the same. It's shock, then maybe laughter, but more importantly, connection. Because the second someone realizes you took the time to learn their language, the walls come down. I've got a short clip here, and it's of him getting his nails done by his friend's mom. Now, she doesn't know who he is, and the son calls her mid manicure and starts asking questions about him, the guy, the Jaume. And she starts to, not exactly, before she knows that he speaks her language, she starts to not exactly gossip about him, but she's definitely, excuse me, she's definitely not complimenting his nails. And this is just a short snippet. The full length video, I think, is about 10 minutes long. McKenna, go ahead and play that clip.
You want a manicure?
Yeah, manicure.
No feet, just the hand.
Oh,
My
you do
girl
feet
do
too?
good feet, yes. My girl do good feet.
She does good feet?
My girl do
Yeah.
good feet.
Really? Okay. Okay, yeah, maybe we could do feet too. Feet
My
too.
girl can do your feet.
Yeah.
And I can do your nails. Your friend is here.
That's her son calling him. How are his nails?
佢啲指甲可以啦，你話好靚又唔係好靚啦，你話好差又唔係好差啦，係咁上下啦。嗰啲皮周圍都係喎，好多皮喎。
His cuticles are massive.
佢話要搽油喎。係啊，佢話要搽指甲油喎，綠色、紅色。佢講真定講少㗎？
你覺得咩顏色好？
嚇？
你覺得咩
There's
顏
he
色？
speaking in Cantonese.
咩顏色？
我哋去識
你覺得粉紅色好冇？
嚇？
我整指甲嘅話，
你
同我咯。
你玩咩啊，靚仔？你講緊廣東話啊？
我廣東話識講少少。我其實普通話，講嘅。
你個衰仔啊！
講嘅好。
Now she gets mad at her son. She knows she was set up.
你個衰仔，你夾埋人哋玩我！
You dirty scam.
你個衰仔啊！包俾你知死好啊！包俾你死緊啊！
So you kind of saw what happened. The second he switched languages, the entire energy changes. And you can see it more if you watch the full clip. But she goes from slightly guarded to laughing. And after she gets over the initial shock, she's completely comfortable. And that's what language does. It signals effort. It signals respect. It signals that you cared enough to meet someone where they are. Now, here's the part that got me thinking about something bigger. Language is constantly evolving. Every generation does it. Right now, if you listen to Gen Alpha talk, kids that are 11, 12 years old, half the words they're speaking sound like code. Words like Riz, Sigma, Skibbity. McKenna's probably laughing at me right now. I don't even know what they mean. You can't even follow the conversation sometimes. Now, I don't hang around with any 11 or 12-year-olds, but I've seen the language on TikTok. McKenna, my daughter, shows me videos all the time. I'm like, what is that word? It's easy for people like me and Ron to roll our eyes and say, what in the world are they talking about? But let's be honest. We did the exact same thing. Every generation does the exact same thing. Our parents didn't understand half of what we were saying either back in the day. Every generation invents its own way of communicating. And the generation before them always thinks that it sounds ridiculous. That's just how language works. Now, I'm not saying that every loan officer or real estate agent needs to start talking like a middle schooler. Please don't walk into a room or a listing and say stuff like no cap. That's not what I'm suggesting, because there's a difference between imitation and fluency. Imitation is awkward. Fluency is understanding. And that brings me to another short clip I want to show you. This time he's speaking, same guy, this time he's speaking to a group of students, and he gives a short talk using their slang. Now, again, this is a shortened clip. I think the full length one is about 7 minutes. This is only just over a minute. But watch how the room reacts. McKenna, go ahead and play this one.
I'm going to try to deliver the rest of this speech in your very own native tongue. Gen Alpha. But wait. So, without further ado, it's low-key a huge W to be vibing here at Westtown High School for Languages Week. But chat, let's lock in. Throat came prepared. Now, I know it's giving to Lulu for this chuggy boomer to speak in such skibbity brain rot, but if you'll bear with me, I'll put the fries in the bag in just a second. I do actually have a message here, type shit. As I was saying, no cap, I was dead-ass pressed about understanding this language. But I had to absorb the drip so I wouldn't get aired by your generation. So yeah, chat, that's the sauce. Keep cooking, stay goated, never be mid, and FR, study hard and go rizz up that knowledge.
Now, I cut the beginning part off that video, and that was just, like I said, an abbreviated clip. But if you saw how the kids were responding at first versus later on, you could see a massive shift in their response to him. At first, the students were expecting another just adult lecture, but the second he speaks their language, the room changes. They lean in, they laugh, they pay attention. Because he didn't demand their attention, he earned it. And the reason he earned it is simple: curiosity. He cared enough to learn, and curiosity is currency. And this is where I think this matters for people in business, especially something like mortgage or real estate, because what we're really talking about here is communication. The way people communicate changes constantly. The platforms change, the tone changes, the speed changes, and expectations change. A 28-year-old first-time home buyer doesn't communicate the same way someone did 20 years ago. They text before they call. They watch before they read. They go to YouTube before they go to a website, your website. And if your communication style hasn't evolved in 10 or 15 years, you're not necessarily wrong, but you might not be fluent. And fluency builds trust. Think about Jaume for a second, this guy. When he speaks Mandarin to someone who expected English, the reaction isn't just surprise, it's quite often appreciation. It says, you took the time to understand me, and that's powerful. If you watch just a few of his videos, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's one where he spent a month learning the Maasai language, and he flies to Kenya. When he does the same thing to a group of guys, and they're just in shock, and they welcome him as a brother and as one of their own. The same thing happens in business. When someone feels like you understand how they think, how they communicate, how they make decisions, trust happens faster, connections happen faster, and business happens faster. But here's the balance. You don't have to become someone you're not. You don't have to start chasing every trend. You don't have to dance on TikTok, but you do have to stay curious. Because the professionals who age well in any industry are the ones who never stop learning how people think. They never stop observing culture. They never stop adapting their communication. They stay fluent, and fluency always wins. Because if you don't speak the language of the room, someone else will. And when they do, they'll get the attention, they'll get the trust, and eventually they will get the business. That's my From the Gut.
Dave, that's another tremendous from the gut. Now, I'll confess, I have zero language skills. I could not learn a foreign language. My life depended on it. Other than after enough tequila, I'll take a run at Spanish. But really, it's really bad. You want to know? I love that. You want to know something interesting, which might be a little bit off topic? As you go around the world, some nationalities, like if you're in Paris and you butcher French, they are not kind to you. They're not like, thank you for trying. They're like, you imbecile American. If you're in Greece and you try to speak Greek and you completely butcher it, you can't even get one word out, they love you for trying. Isn't that interesting?
I think the French are the only one that are kind of known for that. And McKenna can speak to this because McKenna took 4 or 5 years of Rosetta Stone Spanish in school. And correct me if I'm wrong, McKenna, but I don't think you enjoyed it. But then, of course, she went to Guatemala and ended up staying there for 4 years. And I always say that she always tries to correct me, but she's wrong. I would always say after a year that she's fluent in Spanish. She was like, I'm not fluent in Spanish. I don't understand everything they say. I was like, I don't understand everything English people keep saying. It doesn't mean you have to know the 100% of the dictionary to be fluent. Fluent just means you can have a normal conversation with someone. Sure, you'll get flubbed up over something. But anyway, McKenna, any thoughts?
Not fluent. Thank you. But but no, I totally agree with what you're saying, Ron. I remember in Guatemala and even in times where I've been able to speak Spanish in the States, I mean, I get laughed at pretty often for messing things up, but 99% of the time, the people that I've spoken to in Spanish have graciously corrected me after laughing at me. And so after learning how to be embarrassed, it's definitely been an interesting thing. But for the most part, people are very excited and very gracious whenever I speak to them in Spanish.
I just looked up the definition. I just looked up the definition of fluent. Able to express oneself easily and articulately.
Well,
McKenna, I would say that's true for you in Spanish. What were you going to say, Ron?
McKenna, I agree with you. I have very poor Spanish, but oftentimes I have to try to use it because I go to Mexico quite a bit in South America. And everybody has been super kind. They're super appreciative, and usually my Spanish is worse than their English, and we learned that in about 3 sentences. But, David, to fluency, when Mormons go on missions, and they usually go to countries with a different language, they say it takes about a year for them to become kind of fluent. So that year is kind of a thing. But I was reading a recent article that you can become, fluent with 3 months of total immersion. Total immersion and discipline. I don't believe that, but
3 months sounds like a bit of a stretch, unless you're this guy that I was talking about, Jaume. He learned to speak. What was that one? Masai. He learned to speak, at least to be able to borderline just communicate with the people there. I think he did it in a month. But he's, of course, I think he got an honorary doctorate degree in something because of his accomplishments. But anyway.
Good job. Another good.
Yeah. Let's move on to our first topic. So the $300,000 reality check.
Yeah. And what we're going to do, let's go right to the pyramid and we'll understand. And the question is, how many people can afford what level of house? And so what this chart says, this pyramid of affordability, is that bottom, the longest bar on the bottom is a $200,000 up to a $200,000 purchase, and up to a $200,000 purchase, 47.5 million households can afford to buy a house for $200,000. And as you go up the pyramid, only 22.4 million households can afford to buy a house up to $300,000. And only 18 million households can afford a house up to $400,000, all the way until you get to the top of the pyramid, where only 1 million households can afford to buy a house that's $2.5 million or more. And the real focus when you think about affordability is, gosh, only 47.5 million households can afford to buy a house that cost $200,000 based on the average income. Now they don't. This isn't regionalized, and regionalization means everything. So if you regionalize it, all these numbers would be totally different. But I assume still the pyramid would look roughly the same. But so the next slide then goes, well, gosh, how much housing stock is at each one of these price points? And so if you look at the very left, as you're looking at this left of this chart, that first bar, the bar in blue is the solid bar in blue is how many homes are available at $200,000 or less. And the answer is about 20 million. The red line is how many people qualify for a house for $200,000 or less. And as we already know, it's 47 million. And so there's not even half enough housing stock to meet the need for people that can afford a house at $200,000. And in truth, the housing stock doesn't really start matching need until you get to about the $750,000 range. And then it absolutely is one for one when you get to the $1.5 million range. So that's one way to look at affordability. And Dave, we're going to land someplace here that's a little bit different than affordability. But let's go to the next. So this is an article from the National Association of Home Builders with their affordability pyramid. But then this is a chart from Visual Capitalist, and it says how much does it cost to buy a home in the top 50 cities in the United States. And I know this is super small, and so I'll just read some of the top results. But in order to buy a house in San Jose, you need to earn about $458,000 a year. In order to buy a house in San Francisco, you need to earn about $321,000 a year. In order to buy a house in San Diego, you need to earn about $235,000 a year, and so forth. And that brings us down then, okay, with this, under this, the way they analyze this, what are the cheapest places? And the cheapest place is Pittsburgh, where you need to earn $64,106 to be able to afford the average home. In Cleveland, it's $66,280. Oklahoma, it's $71,000. Memphis, $73,000, and Detroit, $74,000. So when I was reading this National Association of Home Builders, the first article where we showed the pyramid of affordability, it really seemed bleak. And even as you read this, Visual Capitalist, it still seemed sort of bleak. The average income in all those areas is well below the average cost to buy a home, the monthly carrying cost. And you go, gosh, this is bleak. This affordability is a huge issue, and it was depressing me. But then I had of course, the immediate epiphany is what's the variable that a potential homeowner can control? The variable they can control is actually their income, right? None of us are locked in on our income. We all have choices to change jobs, to take a second job, for our spouse to take a job, for our spouse to take a second job. We have those options. And so the income isn't completely, inelastic. It's very elastic. And if I was dealing with people that couldn't quite, afford a home yet, part of my coaching would be, how can we fix the income level? What can we do? Can you level up? Can you skill up? Can you go back to school? Can you take a second job? Can you do a gig economy? Can you do Uber? Can you do Uber Eats? Can you do DoorDash? Can you do anything that can help you afford this house? Can your spouse maybe pick up hours? Can you work overtime? Can you get a promotion? Like, I would really go deep down. And that's kind of the point of this topic, Dave, because today's loan officer, today's real estate agent needs to know much more than just how to do a transaction. They need to be a psychological coach. They need to be a financial coach. They really have to help people that have all these obstacles to be able to buy a home, all these obstacles to help their family, get on a new path to wealth, and to attain the American dream. You have to get really proficient at that, proficient at managing people's psyche and their emotions and this whole vibe we have going on. And then with these real hurdles, how do you get over these hurdles? And so that's what impressed upon me. How about you, Dave?
I'm curious of something you said. Did you say Pittsburgh was the most affordable place to live, or
yeah,
what was it?
The Pittsburgh, you need the lowest average income is $64,106.
Why is that? I wouldn't have thought that Pittsburgh would have been there. I would have thought somewhere in the Midwest or Oklahoma or Mississippi. Or why Pittsburgh?
It has to do with, remember, you have to look at both home prices, right? So what's the average price of a home, and then what's the average price of an income? In Pittsburgh, it's in a Rust Belt area, and it's still going through revitalization. just like
Mhm.
Detroit is, and all those Rust Belt areas. You have, I want to say a lot of blight, but you have a lot of vacancies. You have a lot of older housing stock, and so you have lower average prices. And you also, in those markets, what you don't have, David, is you don't have neighborhoods that are like $12 million or $15 million, bringing
Mm.
that average home price up.
Right. McKenna, go to the second slide, please. That graph is shocking. In the difference between the amount of homes available versus the number of people that can qualify. What does that mean?
Yeah,
We just
David,
we've talked about it. We've talked about it a handful of times on this podcast. In the we just need builders to build more affordable homes. 250,000 homes, and there's just a shortage of that. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, it's going to take a concerted effort. It needs a government as well as private, collaboration. Government is a big problem behind high home prices, in my opinion. Builders are willing to pop out millions of $200,000 homes, $250,000 homes. All they need is just their margin. That's all they need. It's not a big deal. But part of it too is that the American appetite for what constitutes a home has completely changed over the last few decades. From the last few generations. When my parents bought a home, we talked about this a million times, but they bought 1,000 square foot home on a small lot. It had like 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and so the house is like $92,000 or something, or really inexpensive, 2 decades ago. But we didn't have 3,000 square foot houses. We didn't have central air conditioning. We didn't have 3 bathrooms and 4 bedrooms. We didn't have all those things. We started with, we didn't have all the upgrades. And so we need to learn how to build entry level homes. And David, there is some hope here, because as they're getting better at manufactured housing, and they're getting better at 3D printing, you're going to see mass produced houses come to the market. And we already see it on the edges. The problem is cities have to embrace that, not fight against it. And part of the problem is, if you live in a nice neighborhood, do you want the 3-acre lot next to you to have, 400 houses on it versus 5 big $1 million houses, multi-million dollar houses? And the neighborhoods resist having that entry level neighborhood right next to them, thinking that it will affect their quality of life and their home's value. So we got to be a little less selfish here in the United States.
Yeah. Are 3D printed houses gaining some steam? I've seen videos of them being built, but I don't know of any major neighborhoods or areas that are actually using it at scale.
Yeah, the technology, like all technologies, David, is radically improving every month, every quarter, every year. And so you're getting more and more case study developments done by 3D printing, and it's getting much better. It's not looking so much like a concrete turd. They're actually starting to make them pretty nice. And I think that is going to be a viable thing. But I also think a bigger impact will be manufactured homes. What they can build in a factory today, and they can build a much better quality home in a factory than they can on site, because they can control all the inputs, labor, they can control quality, they can control the materials. They have a lot more control, and they're really, really nice units. And as a matter of fact, I was reading a survey this morning. We're going to talk about it next week, David, about what builders' fears are going forward, but also what are they encouraged about. I think the number one thing they're encouraged about was manufactured housing, the growth of that as a viable product.
Well, concrete turds is a perfect segue to our next topic, headship rates. Just kidding. It was not a perfect segue.
I'm not sure.
But I just wanted to say that term again.
Yeah. So I came across this article. Originally, it was in another a National Association of Home Builders on their blog, Eye on Housing, which I can't strongly recommend enough. It is a free subscription, and they have some of the best data in mortgage or real estate. So, and they have great, beautiful, rich, charts. But headship rate is essentially can be interchanged with head of household, or as well as household formation. That's how headship rate is, household formation, if you understand it that way. And here's why this topic is really important. Is for the last 10 years, we've been told about the shortage of homes we have, that this 4.5 million shortage of homes or 5 million shortage of homes. And certainly, as we already just looked at, we know there's a gazillion shortage of homes in the entry level. We can't argue that. But what I would argue is that our basic model to determine, how many homes we need is flawed because we don't understand household formation or headship rate. And we have a much higher headship rate or much faster homeowner formation than is really going on right now. And part of it is affordability. See, so home formation is extremely elastic to all sorts of inputs, including affordability in the economy, including consumer sentiment. But there's also a sea change going on underneath that, where people are getting married later, and people are having kids later, and people are making all these delays. And so, if the average age of first-time home buyer, in which we could argue about what that is, because there's all sorts of studies, but if the average age is, let's say, it's 35 or 36, right? That's 10 years older than 2 generations ago. And so we have to start to look at a different model of calculating how many houses we need as a household formation, trends change. And that's really the point here of this whole thing. And what the article says, just so you know, is that household formations have slowed down significantly. They're essentially they're right now at 43.7%. Which is better than in 2017 when they're 40.2%, but they're less than historic averages, which is 46%. And you guys are going to go, well, gosh, percentage of what? And that's the age of 25 to 34-year-olds, leaving the nest to go create their own household. That's or leaving I don't want to say commune, but a communal property to go launch their own household. That's what that means. David, what are your thoughts? Oh yeah, we have this chart here it is, by the way. Very interesting too. Here's a mapped out. Here it's mapped out across the country. The most interesting thing, blue has the highest number of housing formations. The little aqua green or yellow has the least. And what's quite obvious is in expensive states we have with slower household formations because it costs a lot of money to go buy a house. People can't go do it. So in the coast and the expensive zones, they're very slow. But in the Midwest, in some of the Northeast or North Central, where it's cheaper, people launch faster. The other thing is when you have kind of more of a independent kind of culture, like in the Midwest, kind of self-sufficient, kids launch faster than they do in maybe some of the coast where we're a little bit more dependent, or a little bit more clingy than say some of those more independent areas. Dave, now what do you think? I've rambled on.
Yes. I'm going to show my ignorance. And before I say this, I was born in Scotland, grew up in Scotland. I can't look at all 50 states and name them. The 3 blue in the middle, Wyoming, Montana, I think Colorado's on the left. It's a square.
It's Nebraska. It's Nebraska. I think Indiana is down here. The top, North Dakota, South Dakota.
Okay. So why do you think it's the strongest up there?
Well, one, you have a lower cost of homes. That's first. Second, you have a very independent-minded, self-sufficient citizenry, right? Like they're very individualistic up there, and that's quite different than say in Northern California, where we're more communal. And so we don't want to leave the nest. We don't want to leave our friends, But in Montana or Wyoming or the Dakotas, they're like, I want to get the hell out. I'm a rugged individualist. I'm going to go, and I think that's the biggest difference.
Yeah. Montana and Wyoming, that's to the left of the 3 deep blue ones, right?
Yeah. To the left is Montana and Idaho. Wyoming is below Montana.
Okay. And yeah, disclaimer, I grew up in Scotland. I've lived. I know McKenna could probably get all 50, but yeah, I moved to the States when I was 14. So that's my excuse. It's not a good excuse, but there's a lot of expensive homes in Wyoming.
Yeah. I think the thing we're hitting on, the more rugged individualists they are, the more likely they are to launch earlier. I think that's really one of the big keys.
Right.
As well as affordability.
Yeah, I'm surprised to actually see Florida where it's at. I guess a lot of retirees. Is that probably the biggest reason for that? That it's a highly retiree state?
Super old
Good mo-
population,
Yeah.
super old population, which is swaying that percentage.
Right. Right.
And you also have a lot of really expensive areas in Florida, but it's more that the population sways older, so you have fewer young people, you know?
Yeah. Right. Alrighty. No further thoughts from me. You ready to talk about rich old people?
Let's talk about rich old people, and we're gonna
All right.
commingle a couple of different sources here. We're gonna use an article from A Wealth of Common Sense. That's where we got the title, Rich Old People. We're also gonna use a very well-cited article from Wall Street Journal, Gen X and Millennials will inherit trillions in real estate over the next decade. All these are good. Some of the charts are a little bit confusing, but let's just get to the data, and then let's see what it means. This is a chart. So this is the estimated amount of real estate wealth transfer over the next 10 years by net worth. So people that have a net worth of 5 million to 30 million in the US, there's going to be about $1.6 trillion in real estate transferred. For people that have a net worth of 30 to 100 million, it's going to be about half a trillion. Same thing for people that are worth over $100 million. Now, what's David, when you look at this, I know what struck you is that the United States is going to have as much, property wealth transfer in the next 10 years as the rest of the world combined. And did that surprise you? And how did it surprise you?
Yeah. So the dark blue line is the US. It says it up top, but if you're looking at it on a phone or something and it's real small, the dark blue line is US and the light blue line is the rest of the world. And the left is 5 million to 30 million. That is just, I mean, we all know that the United States is wealthy, the wealthiest country. Is it the wealthiest country in the world?
I don't think so per capita. It's
Yeah.
not.
But that is just astounding that it's basically even or a little bit more. My jaw just dropped when I saw that yesterday.
Yeah, what's interesting, David, is if they should have put the category 0 to 5 million because that's where most of the
Yeah.
wealth transfer is going to happen. The real estate wealth
Right.
transfer. I mean, it's like 4 times as high as the 5 million to 30 million. So
Is
the
it
total
really?
amount the total amount is going to be transferred to something ridiculous like 17 trillion or 18 trillion. But nevertheless, what we can do is we can juxtapose the real estate wealth transfer versus just liquid wealth overall liquid wealth transfer, and which is the next slide, and look how much this changes. So if you think of this way, the lowest rung on the rich ladder had the highest transfer, and the highest rung on the rich ladder had the lowest transfer of wealth through real estate. But if you go through assets, it goes the other way. It's like the people that are worth 100 million or more, the Jeff Bezos, are sort of skew the average, and they're going to transfer a lot more wealth, than the people in the other two buckets here.
So wait, the previous one, I thought the previous one was net worth. This one is net worth. What was the previous
This
one?
is no, they're both net worth, but this is net worth by overall wealth. The other one's net worth by real estate.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the overall wealth transfer. I think this is wealth transfer, not including real estate. So one compared real estate versus one just compared like assets, and so it's just interesting to me about how the different, buckets transfer. But I don't love these slides. Let's go to the next slide because this is where it gets a little bit more interesting.
Here's a fun fact from our producer McKenna
Yeah.
that's relevant. As of 2025 through 2026, the world's richest countries per capita are dominated by small, high-income economies with Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, and Singapore. That's interesting.
Yeah. Thank you,
Liechtenstein.
producer McKenna. So let's look at this. This is interesting. So this is the share of consumer spending by age group, and it's a really primitive chart. It's people over 55 and people under 55. And you can see in the year 2000, people over 55 really only accounted for about 30% of spending, while people over 55 accounted for the bulk at 70%. But we're just about to hit in the middle 50-50. We might hit it, next year, the year after, where people over 55 are going to account for just as much spending as everybody under 55. Now, David, before you comment, the question would be, well, geez, how many more older people are there? And is that accounting the differences? And so the next slide is going to address this. And what the next slide shows is, Here's the population growth of people over 70. Now, not quite what we were saying, 55 or over, but it's still directionally correct. So the population of people over 70 has increased by 50% from 8% to 12%. But the net worth of those folks has increased from 19% to 32%. And what this means is this older people are richer. And part of the reason why older people are richer is that the baby boomers were really the first generation that participated in mass in Wall Street. They're the first ones to have 401ks. And so they were able to create wealth. And of course, the stock market did phenomenally well, went up 14% over their lifetime. That's compounded. So they created all sorts of wealth through the market. They created all sorts of wealth through the homes. They were very high household formation and buying homes. And because of that, and because of their longevity, they've created a tremendous amount of wealth. So David, those are the DATs, the data. Now let's see if we can't find a signal in here. But any thoughts before we do that?
No. No, let's keep moving.
Well, here's the thing, David. Here's the thing I would just press upon everybody is that, look, if there's going to be this massive generational wealth transfer, there's going to be this massive transfer in real estate. It's a real thing. As a matter of fact, David, 1 out of every 5 homes in California is exchanged hands through inheritance. 1 in 5. 1 in 5. That's a lot, David. 1 in 5.
Over what period of time?
Last year. 1 in 5 homes exchanged hands through inheritance in California last year. I'm working on a LinkedIn post on this, which is great. I know it's going to be on our topic next week, so we're not going to go into it a lot. And because the question is California creating a caste system or a generational wealth system? And we're going to talk about that next week. But here is the thing: there is this mass generational wealth transfer, and for us, mortgage and real estate, we have to look at it like that's a river of abundance. There's this river of abundance. My brother always used to tell me this, Ron, in our business, there's a river of abundance that flows through our business. All you have to do is get in it. Get in it. Like quit being on the shore, quit being on the bank, get into the river of abundance. And so this is a clear river of abundance. If I can serve the elder generation and help them transfer wealth, help them use their real estate to transfer their estate, right? If I can learn how to do that, I have a massive pool of potential customers, right? And these people are no way rate sensitive. It's no way. So I would have to partner with estate planners and CPAs. I'd have to master, how, what kind of trusts are there and how can you set up trusts? And there's 3 main trusts. We've talked about it before. We're not going to go in here, but how you set up transferring wealth, how it can be, how can you set up long-term? What's the tax benefits if you set up different estates, right? Different trusts. How can you transfer real estate without being taxed? How can you transfer it early before you die, right? All these things. But I would become proficient. I would happily, if I jump back into the waters of origination, this is probably the river I jump in first. I would solve this. I would be doing, generational wealth transfer seminars. I'd be doing at the local civic centers. I'd be doing it at real estate offices. I'd be doing it online. I'd be partnering with my affinity partners. I would be slaying this because to me, this is one of the juiciest places for us to fish right now. David?
I'm ready to move on. We've got our first rapid fire topic coming up, and we talked about it yesterday. And you know how all your devices are always listening to you, right?
Yep.
Our next topic, we're talking about barn dominiums. I can't tell you, and Ron and I talked about it just yesterday or 2 days ago. I can't tell you how many advertisements and posts and content I've seen about barn dominiums in the last 24 to 48 hours since we first started talking about it. They've been showing up on my social feeds left, right, and center.
Dave, do you want a quick tangent?
Yeah. A rant? A Ron's rant?
No, it's not a rant at all. They have a new device that will jam having your devices be able to hear your voice. And it's coming out, I think, in 2 months, and they already have 1 million sold.
Really? And does it plug into your phone or what does it physically look like?
It's like a signal that diffuses your voice so the devices can't understand it.
So it's hardware. It's not software. It's hardware.
It's hardware.
Is
it's like
it like a pin that you have to wear or something?
No, no, you put it like on your desk. It's like a little disc that you just set, out on your counter, and it blocks any device from being able to understand your voice. And it only has like a 20-foot radius, but you can put them around your house. You could totally have privacy.
That is brilliant. What would be even more brilliant if they made like a little pin um,
Yeah,
uh, with the same type thing. That way, regardless of where you are or where you're walking, that it can do that.
I'm sure it's coming.
You better stop
Oh.
talking and start getting to patenting so that way people don't steal your ideas.
I
No,
got
I'll
better
tell you
things to work on.
All right, let's talk about barn doors.
Barndos. That sounds like a slur.
Yeah, it
You
does.
barndo.
Larry Ulish, who is pretty active on LinkedIn. He's pretty clever. I follow him. He talked about this. Could a barn be the answer to the American housing crisis? But both you and me, Dave, are super. We're super into this today. They're beautiful. They're very sturdy. They're energy efficient, and they're open air. They're super cool. And I think McKenna has some stats, so I'm not just going to have to make all these up, which I was about to. But the average cost to build a traditional house in the United States is somewhere between 100 and 150 square foot. The average cost to build a barn dough is about $65. You can build a really inexpensive barn dough for about $113,000 all in. If you wanted a 4,000 square foot, totally tricked out house, probably it does depend where you live, but about $450,000. They take about half the time to complete from start to finish. They're more pest resistant. They're fire resistant. They're even built to withstand Category 3 hurricanes. The new ones are very energy efficient with their modern insulated and the spray foam insulation. So there's a lot of positives to them. Now there's some negatives to them, which I think we have on the next slide.
There's a pretty
Some of the
interesting typo on that last one. It said 4,500 K. What would that be? 450 million?
So going on to challenges, it's hard to find financing. You oftentimes have to go to a farm credit lender or a credit union that kind of specializes in portfolio lender, hard money lenders. Zoning is a challenge. Most cities, urban and suburban areas don't allow barn dominiums right now. If you're trying to buy or trying to sell one, you're going to have a really hard time creating value because there's no comp data, which is why you go to an alt financing. But that also becomes a problem when you go to sell. It's super hard for the buyer to figure out what to buy it for because there's no way to give them any type of confidence. So those are all challenges. The other thing is, as you can imagine, it's a metal structure. And so, when it rains, or wind or hail, you hear that, ping, 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 ping. Now, they say that with good insulation, you can pretty much completely offset that or eliminate that. Who knows? And then finally, I think we have one other set of stuff, if I remember. Oh, who at least Larry thought these would be really attracted to. First-time home buyers who are priced out of the traditional markets, especially if they have family that has a bunch of land, where all you have to do is buy the barn. And a lot of times these barns are kits. They come in like kits, almost like a manufactured home. They're really easy to put up. Remote workers who can move anywhere in the country, so they can move to remote locations that allow this type of building. Hobbyists, tradespeople, and small business owners who want a work-live space. They want, maybe upstairs to be the home, downstairs to be the shop or the horses, for all we know. And then I don't accept this, retirees, going to downsize into the jungle. Maybe not, but Larry put that as that. But I think they're pretty cool, David. And I don't know if we got a bunch of pictures of them. We were talking about them, but they're not what you think. These are Mac Daddy, beautiful, open, great. Like, who wouldn't want to live in that? I do.
So I've been aware. Maybe you turned me on to barn dominiums a year or two ago. I don't know, but I've seen them over the last couple years or whatever. And anytime I see them, I always think like I'm I'm not the type of guy that wants a ton of land. I love the outdoors. I love hunting, fishing, all that stuff. But I'm not a guy that really wants to own a bunch of land. But if I did, I could see myself building one of these, but not as my main residence, but for it to be kind of like a clubhouse. That's what I've always envisioned myself seeing one. as for myself. Be in a clubhouse with a pool table and arcades and a bar and a guest room or two, and so on, a kitchenette or a full kitchen, whatever. That's kind of how I've always viewed them, not as a primary residence. But do you know how many are they being, are they, is the rise in popularity in them
They're
is a private residence or more of just like a clubhouse barn type thing?
no, definitely as a private residence.
Really?
Definitely.
Pri
Yeah.
primary residence?
I didn't say that. It could be secondary, primary. It
Okay.
didn't say it, but it's definitely not for using it as a shop because they wouldn't really be
Right.
considered a barn dominium.
Right.
Yeah,
It'd just be a barn.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I love the look of them. If I was one of those guys that wanted, 5 acres, 10 acres, whatever, I would definitely have one of those, but it wouldn't be the primary residence. It'd be more of the clubhouse party, slash guest house.
It would be the man cave, just in a barn.
Yeah. Pretty much. Pretty much.
All right. I think we
All right.
killed the barn dominiums.
Barnuminiums on to AI and young people raised on AI for our next rapid fire topic.
Yeah, we won't spend a ton of time on this, but we brought this up because we're, of course, huge fans of things like first home IQ and battling financial literacy. And last week, David, we talked about how to teach financial literacy in an AI world or in a digital world. But this week we're talking about, gosh, what's the impact of all these kids that are raised on AI? What's happening to them? And so we're sharing a survey by Sherwood News, and we can just go ahead and show the survey, and then we can comment on it, David. And this survey says, "Hey, what's positive about AI in your world?" And this is people 13 to 17, by the way. And what's negative, right? And so on the positive side, the kids said 30% of kids said, "Hey, it makes life better, easier." 20% said it's good for learning and getting information. 19% said it's more efficient, makes me more productive. 8% said, there's a positive impact on jobs and work. I don't know how a 13-year-old knows that, but good for them. And then 8% said, tech evolving is the future, so that's good. But here's what's interesting. So some of these things, I'm not sure how the 13-year-old has propensity to say what the impact is on jobs and work. They probably
Yeah.
have a paper route. But nevertheless, what was interesting is what they saw as negative. And one was, this is the number one thing, over-reliance, loss of critical thinking or creativity. Or put differently, and the article put this more, is people are just getting dumber the more they use AI. And kids are actually worried about that, which is encouraging to me. Now, the next thing is 25% of them are worried about job loss. I don't know how a 13-year-old can be worried about job loss from AI in the future. What are they? Where are they hearing that from? Now, I'm not saying it's not a thing, but where are they getting that from? Like, I don't even know, right? And then misinformation. It can tell you it can't tell you what's real, so they don't trust it. They fear that it's going to be misused and some evil enterprise is going to take over the world. And then they think there's a loss of the human factor. Now, only 6% of kids care about that. So there you go. But David, how do these results strike you?
The overall thing strikes me as bogus. And I didn't see this yesterday when we were looking at it, because almost 1,500 teens and age 13 to 17. And I hear what you're saying, Ron. How many kids age 13 to 17 are talking about job loss or talking about misinformation or talking about loss of human factor? I feel like they were steered a lot in this survey, or it's fake or something. I don't know.
It could be, or it could be that they really do have fear. Hey, producer McKenna, you're closer to 13 to 17-year-olds than I am by about
She's 24.
I know, but
I'm
you're
still
closer.
closer than you are.
You think kids are actually worried about getting the job? 13-year-olds, 14, 15, 16-year-olds are thinking AI are taking their future away?
Well, for one, it goes all the way up to 17, and your son got into coding when he was 14. And now they're saying that, or maybe they're saying whatever, one of the highest risk jobs is coding. And
Yeah.
he got into that at 14. And so it's not just 13-year-olds. So I don't think you're quite giving them enough credit in that there are kids and they're on the same internet that I'm on. And, I'm hearing the same things. And unfortunately, they're on the same internet that I'm on. But, I think you should give kids more credit. They're a lot more aware than a lot of people think. And yeah, I think that they are aware of certain positives and negatives to AI and the internet and everything like that.
I don't think they're on the same internet as you are. You're on the dark web. They're not on the dark web.
I'm definitely not on the dark web.
You know, but it's very entirely possible. I mean, kids are fearful these days, so they could be getting negative inputs, and that's scaring the bejesus out of them. I'm willing to believe that.
I mean, yeah,
Speaking about inputs, yep.
I was just saying that you talk a lot about vibes and the vibes that are out there, and kids catch that and kids see that, and they're hearing about jobs, and they may not know all the details or the full scope or anything like that, but they hear that and it can worry them about the kind of jobs that they might be interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right, McKenna. But let's transition talking about inputs. Let's transition to the next topic. It was National Reading Day last Thursday, Book Reading Day, something like that. I think Thursday. And so with that, we got the typical articles on people reading, and it's interesting to see. And if we can just go straight to the data, the bottom line is 40% of Americans didn't read a book last year. 40% didn't, and you can see here in the scale, you know, um, you know, 27% read one to four books, 13% read 5 to 9, 9% read 10 to 19, 6% read 20 to 49, and 4% read over 50. And the reason why this kind of is important is very much it's very much like I remember, David, exactly what we're talking about. We were talking about people not being able to do basic math. Something like 55% of kids graduating from college or it was like 55% of people go into the best universities in the country couldn't do basic math. And we're like, so the brightest kids can't do basic math, and how can anybody figure out compound interest or mortgage payment, just to say how much we have to educate folks? Well, this is the same kind of topic as the people not being able to do math. Well, if you don't read either, if you don't read and you can't do math, you might struggle with some basic concepts. And so this tells you how much further we have to go to educate our customers, and also how we have to dumb that down. When you get in ChatGPT to help you, to say, hey, you got to write this at a second grade level so that my potential customers can read it. But other than that, Dave, what do you get out of this?
My eyes go down to the bottom part, and that's what interests me the most. Is the purple is physical books, the green is audiobooks, and the orange is ebooks. I wish, gosh, getting old. My 48-year-old eyes are getting worse.
The older you get, the more likely you read digital books, is essentially bottom line. Or the more you read, the more you read, the more likely you are to read digital books. And yeah, Dave, what are you gonna say?
I would have thought in today's day and age, audiobooks probably would have been at the top, would have trumped, and maybe it's kind of close to
really
physical books.
Yeah, I mean, people aren't buying physical books, so there's, this is a preference, not a reality. Because I guarantee you, the reality isn't that people are buying that many physical books,
Sure.
and far more people are doing audio books or digital books. But if you're so, David, I'm in the 4% group, and I used to have a library of somewhere near like 7,000 books, and that library was useless to me. It was mostly I had all sorts of bookshelves everywhere, and in my house, my garage, and then I had totes full of books. But if I ever actually wanted to find a book, I could never find it. I simply couldn't find it. And I have a huge joy of reading the physical book. I believe in Tim Sanders when he talked about Love is a Killer app and how to gain knowledge. He's like, read books, but read a real physical book, a hardcover book. And that was always my standing philosophy for up until just about 10 years ago. But then I got so frustrated lugging all these books around and not being able to ever find them that we literally donated our books to a couple libraries. And then we digitized all our books. So now if I want a book, I can just pull up my iPad and find it in 2 seconds. You know, it's like not hard to do anymore. And now I can, keep 100,000 books on this little thing versus carrying around all those totes. And so it's weird how my own behavior has changed, which it's not about me. So I'm just representing that group. What are your thoughts?
This is not a discipline that I have that I wish I did. I think I've ordered 4 books in the last year, maybe 16 months, and I haven't read a single one of the books that I've ordered and bought. And I I feel like I'm a pretty well researched guy. If I'm gonna go down any kind of endeavor, I research the shit out of it, but I am not a well-read person. It's I would say it's a weakness of mine. I don't read enough, and I wish I did. But the desire's there because I think I've bought 4 books in the last handful of months, but I haven't actually read any of them. I ingest all of my stuff digitally.
Have you listened to the books I've sent you?
No. Well, we had a technical glitch to begin with, but I did figure that out because I don't have an Audible account. My wife has the Audible account, and she was like, I don't know how to get it or download it, whatever." I figured it out, but since then I have not. My apologies.
No, but David, you consume a ton of content. There's preferences from different, channels,
Right.
different modems, and that's another thing,
Mhm.
where we used to have. It's so funny, David, because if you're going to go try to research something, learn how to do something, you're going to go to YouTube, because you're going to want to watch it, see it. I'm going to go to an AI tool, but it's interesting. We just have different comfort zones on how we learn and how we like to consume content. And we're definitely getting away from books. Now, books generally have a little different content. The stuff we consume online, or even whether it be in digital or video, it is something that is that we need like immediately, like something that is to serve us this minute. Where things we read in books are something to help form us as a human. It's a different play. It's a different transcendence, and there's still a difference, but I'm a little disappointed people are getting away from that, help, the greater basis for how to become a human, the human they want to be. But anyway, that's books. I know he has some other charts, but let's skip it because we're behind. What do you guys think?
One more thought before we move on to our last segment, and I've been super into Ron. You know this. I've been super into my lawn the last 2 years or so. I've got Bermuda grass, and I've become a bit of a Bermuda psycho. But I haven't spent a ton of money at the lawnmower I want is like $3,000, whatever. It's a real lawnmower, not REAL, but REEL, real lawnmower. It's the type of mowers that they use on putting greens and that kind of stuff. But I had someone come over and help me lower my height of cut by like an inch, but I needed a real gas powered real lawnmower, which I don't have. And we were doing it together. Super nice guy. Never met him before, but I posted on a Bermuda Facebook page, and he was like, "I'll come do it for you." So he came over. We're doing it together, and it turns off one time, so he pulls the chain, the rope to get it started again. And it broke. So we spent 30 minutes trying to fix it, and we ended up fixing it by me watching a couple YouTube videos. I was like, "All right, here's how you do it. Let's do it." And we watched it. And then when he brought it over here, ratchet straps, tie downs, ratchet straps. If you don't feed the straps through the little knuckle correctly, it's a nightmare. You can never get them undone. And so he fed it through the ratchet strap on the bed of his truck to get his lawnmower here. And he was feeding it through and it just wasn't working. So I pulled up a YouTube video because I have ratchet straps, but I only use them every 4 years, 5 years, or whatever. I always forget how to feed them through correctly so it doesn't screw up. I pulled up a YouTube video. I was like, here's how you do it. Here's how you correctly feed a ratchet strap so it doesn't get tightened in on itself. He was like, "You really are good at YouTube, or you're like a YouTube diehard." That's my go-to. It sounds very Gen Alpha, but I can't tell you it's actually YouTube is how I learned my profession and what got me to where I am at today, because I'm obsessive about what I'm passionate about. And that's what YouTube is to me. I learn from YouTube, and YouTube's different now today than what it was 15 years ago, but YouTube is just an absolute it's a dictionary, it's a DIY guide, it's a you name it. But that's how I got to where I'm at today. But anyway, sorry, McKenna told me to shut up, and let's move on to our AI tip of the week.
We'll be quick on the AI topic. I know we're running late, but you know, we got music. I'm gonna let it hit.
On the bumper.
So, Dave, what we're going to just quickly preview is Perplexity's new tool called Perplexity Computer. And with this new tool, what they're doing is that they've embedded 19 different AI models into this AI tool. And what you do is you conversationally tell Perplexity what you need, and it will then go to the appropriate model to get it done. And so I think in the example we have on the next screen, it may go to Opus 4.6 to do some core reasoning, ChatGPT to do some long textual queries and comprehensive web searches, Grok to run lightweight tasks, Gemini for deep research and to create subagents, VO to process video, and Nano Banana to generate images. So it will do that all independently. It will go to the best tool in the 19 to create a complete project, and it will do it in the background. So like you can give it a comprehensive direction. Please create my business plan, marketing plan, whatever. Give it really detailed prompt and let it work. And it will use all these different tools on its own to create the output, which is really incredible. So that's really, so the idea is, and that's just building on what we said before. If you want to really elevate your AI game, is when you start bolting together multiple AI tools because they each have their own superpower. And this with this Perplexity is that you don't have to figure out what each tool's superpower is. Perplexity will help you figure it out, and it will give you access to them, so you don't have to have subscriptions to all 19. How does that strike you, David?
I'm curious, Ron, in your mind, how would you use that? I've got an answer to this, and it's the new product that we're working on. But on a day-to-day basis, what would be the functional or basic use for having to use up to 19 different AI products for an everyday task? How does that serve you in your everyday AI tasks?
Well, you know what happens? It already happens today. Today, I use 4 different AI tools. I have them open all day long, and I'll start one, and then I'll hit what its restriction is, and I'll go to the other one. For example, Gemini can't issue spreadsheets, but it will give me a code for a spreadsheet, which I can then embed, cut and paste into ChatGPT, and it will give me a beautiful spreadsheet. Right? If I wanted then to create that image from that spreadsheet, I would go to a visual tool. I'd go to Nano Banana or Midjourney, and I do my visual. Well, what this is saying is you don't have to do that anymore. It will just do it for you on the one platform, very much like the Centauri board. It's exactly like that. In fact, I emailed Eric Post and said, "This sounds a lot like your Centauri board." He goes, "Yes, it does."
Have you used Nano Banana or any of the image or video generation tools?
I sometimes try to play with it. I failed miserably because that's not my jam.
Yeah. When I started my Little Nessie podcast 2 years ago, I had a guy on there called Trey Rigdon. He's the CMO for Summit Funding. And this was 2 years ago. AI has evolved and matured a lot in 2 years, but we were kind of dogging on. I don't think Nano Banana existed back then. I think it was Midjourney was the dominant player in the game, but we were just kind of shitting on Midjourney. And coming from people who have led creatives and artists and that kind of stuff. And for me, it's a great tool. It's an amazing tool, but it's not the end all be all yet. It will be someday. But any final thoughts?
No, we're over time. Let's wrap it up.
We are over time. All right. We had a lot of viewers this week. Ron, I don't know if you were watching our viewership, but we had quite a lot of people tracking across Facebook, not Instagram, but Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, where else? Doesn't matter. Anyway, but that was a fun one. I enjoyed it. So happy Thursday. Cheers to you, Ron. I think I'm out.
Thanks for watching live or watching the replay. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, David. Thanks, McKenna.
See you next Thursday. Happy hour.